This time, we're talking about the characteristics of people who can't stop once they've decided to do something, the truth behind extreme drive and loneliness. Let's get into it. Once they start moving, no one can stop them. Even when the people around them say, "Slow down a little," the words don't register. Before they know it, they've thrown everything aside and are charging forward. Do you ever feel tired of being that way? Or perhaps you've been close to someone like this and found yourself unable to understand why they pushed themselves so far. In this video, we'll look into the psychology behind people who can't stop once they've decided, exploring the structure of their impulsivity and deep focus from a psychological perspective. It doesn't come from strength of will or sheer grit. It comes from somewhere much deeper. It may look like they're consciously deciding, "All right, let's do this," but in most cases, the body is already reacting before the decision is even made. The moment they feel discomfort, a sense of being stuck, anxiety, or unease, they're already moving in a certain direction, and their conscious mind is simply catching up afterward. From the outside, they appear decisive and action-oriented. But inside, the drive to escape this discomfort takes over, leaving little room for rational judgment. Because of this, planning gets pushed aside, and "just keep moving" takes priority over calculating risk. Since this motivation is slightly different from genuine passion, people in this pattern tend to fall into cycles of burnout or regret after acting. At the root of this type of behavior lies a stronger drive to escape discomfort, rather than pursue pleasure. It's not so much that they want to gain something, it's that they can no longer tolerate the unease of where they currently are, and so they suddenly begin to move. This is why, even when a goal is reached, the sense of satisfaction rarely lasts. The moment new discomfort arises, they're already heading toward another change. There is no secure now to rest in, just a constant feeling of moving toward the next place. That is what runs beneath the surface of this type of person's daily life. The reason the chain of action never stops is not laziness, and it's not greed. It may simply be a desperate response to the inability to find rest in the present moment. Once they start moving, stopping becomes extremely difficult. This isn't a sign of strong willpower. Rather, the anxiety and fear around stopping are so intense that continuing to move is how they maintain psychological balance. There is a structure here that resembles addiction or obsessive-compulsive tendencies, a feeling that, if I stop, something will collapse, or if I stop moving, I might disappear. This keeps the behavior going, unconsciously. While deeply absorbed, they can keep their awareness away from real-world anxiety and loneliness. Because the absorption itself functions as a kind of avoidance, stopping means returning to reality, and the unconscious mind rejects that. Most people would step back once they recognize, "If I keep going, I'll lose more." But this type of person may be unable to stop, even when the damage is already visible, or already happening. This is close to the sunk cost psychology seen in gambling addiction, the feeling that, "I've come this far," or, "if I stop now, it all becomes meaningless," overrides calm judgment. When a change has been decided upon, the person directs as much energy, if not more, toward maintaining that change as they would toward maintaining the status quo. Stopping midway actually becomes a greater source of stress. The cost of stopping feels greater than the cost of continuing. That is the core of why this type of person cannot stop. Once in a state of deep focus, awareness of those around them narrows significantly. This isn't intentional. It's that their cognitive capacity becomes so concentrated on one point that the feelings and circumstances of others fall outside their field of vision. When people wonder, "Why can't that person read the room?" the truth is often that the person simply has no capacity to look around them, and that's different from selfishness or bad intentions. Still, the real-world result is that those around them get hurt, and relationships break down. It is precisely in moments that require flexibility that this type's core nature becomes most visible, the inability to stop their own momentum, even at the cost of cooperation. Even when aware that they are causing trouble for others, they cannot stop. The feeling of, "I know, but I just can't stop," is characteristic of dependent behavioral patterns, a state that cannot be controlled by willpower alone. In these moments, the person is far from numb. In fact, they are often deeply wounded. Between the self-reproach of, maybe something is wrong with me, or, I've dragged others into this again, and the reality of being unable to stop, they carry a profound inner conflict. As that unresolved conflict accumulates, the sense of loneliness and isolation only deepens. By continuing to choose change, relationships slowly begin to erode. Those around them start to feel, here we go again, or, when will this ever stop, and at some point quietly step back. This is the typical process of isolation that this type of person experiences. The person feels, no one understands me, while those around them feel, I can't keep chasing after them. With both sides unable to meet, the relationship ends quietly. Loneliness and isolation are similar but different. Loneliness is an internal feeling, while isolation is an external reality. This type of person often carries both at the same time, and yet continues to move forward. When isolation deepens, this type of person often reaches a point where they choose to let everything go. Work, relationships, the self they used to be. By releasing all of it, they try to escape the next wave of discomfort. This may look like self-destruction from the outside, but for the person themselves, it is often a choice made simply to survive. And in cutting things away, there is a temporary sense of relief. But what follows isn't a new beginning. It's another encounter with a different kind of discomfort. Through the cycle of repeated change, the edges of one's own limits gradually come into view. It is only when a person feels, I cannot go any further, that the possibility of stopping is born. It may be in that suffering that a person first begins to see the true shape of who they are. Continuing to move without a plan is something like traveling without a destination. When the discomfort in front of them disappears, new discomfort appears, and they move again to escape it. Within this cycle, the feeling of, it's okay for me to be here, rarely has room to grow. Seeking rest while being unable to create a restful state, that is the suffering that runs at the core of this type of person. Change itself is not a bad thing. But change made only to erase discomfort often becomes a way of postponing discomfort rather than creating a comfortable place to be, and it rarely moves toward any real resolution. For someone who cannot stop to actually stop, they need to change what stopping means to them. Stopping is not defeat. It is the act of looking at reality, and sometimes, that requires courage. Time spent quietly looking at what they have been running from, that may be the most difficult thing for this type of person, and also the most necessary. Rather than blaming themselves for moving impulsively, asking the question, what discomfort have I been avoiding, can be the beginning of something shifting. Rather than seeing a lack of planning or cooperation as flaws, turning attention to the deep sensitivity and urgency that lie behind them may allow for a slightly different view of oneself. People who cannot stop once they've decided are not strong, they simply cannot stop. It is impulse. It is a structure that resembles dependency. It is a desperate response to discomfort. Carrying both loneliness and isolation, continuing to change even as damage accumulates, letting go of everything while pressing forward, that kind of suffering is the kind that is hard for others to see. Please don't leave the exhaustion of always moving untouched. Rather than blaming yourself for not being able to stop, the act of quietly asking why you cannot stop may lead you to something important.